of Education says it will investigate the rape of a pupil at XULU Secondary School in Vosloorus. The teenager was allegedly raped by a member of the school governing body who is also a local priest at the Vision of Church, Christ Church.
I am so scared even to walk alone. Because I don't trust anybody now.
A devout Christian who shared the stage with his pastor. This woman is a fellow church member.
The teenager had been his servant, but in a strange manner, when the pastor preached, the teenager would wipe off his sweat. He'd also pour him some water during the sermon.
But the teenager's humility took a knock last November.
He sent me in the room to fetch some jacket for him. So he followed me and opened a drawer and took out condoms. And he said I must lie down flat in the bed.
And most alarming, the suspect is a member of the SGB at the victim's school.
My marks dropped a lot. And I was not focusing because he was coming every day and standing at the door.
We took a position on Tuesday once we have heard of the developments and suspended him from the body.
The department has intervened.
We will be launching an investigation. Our psychosocial team will visit the family on Monday just to have an understanding on how we can support the child.
It took 5 months for the pupil to report the incident. A case was opened and the suspect arrested on May 18, but 2 church members allegedly attempted to make the case disappear.
They entered me in the car, so they said I must tell the video that the pastor did nothing to me, to withdraw the statement.
Fearing for his life, the teenager obliged as seen in this video.
He didn't do anything wrong. They made me sign blank papers and then later wrote a wrong statement on them.
The family believes the video might have influenced the case.
The prosecutor did not place the case on the roll because of outstanding investigation. It is why the suspect was released. But we are continuing with the investigation. Once it has been finalized, we are going to take this case back to court. The suspect, we know where is his whereabouts, and it won't be a problem to place the case back on the roll.
But his release has angered the community, resulting in his church building being demolished. For this family, a renewed sense of hope that justice will be done. SABC News, Vosloorus.
Now, today marks the beginning of Child Protection Week. Social Development Minister Susan Shabangu led the campaign's launch in Pretoria. This year's theme is Let Us All Protect Children to Move South Africa Forward. The department says 1 in 5 children in South Africa are subjected to some sort of sexual, emotional or physical abuse before they turn 18. Now, joining us via telephone here in Johannesburg is Vincentia Dlamini, the Operations Director of the organization Women and Men Against Child Abuse. Vincentia, now the Bill of Rights, particularly Section 28 to be more specific, says children need to be protected from maltreatment, neglect, abuse or any degradation, amongst other things. It is therefore incumbent on all of us as South Africans to play a role in protecting children and also to create a safe and secure environment for them. How do you think we as a society can achieve this?
First of all, we need to acknowledge that children fall victims of abuse, and hence those that are entrusted to take care of them. They fall victims of abuse by those close to them. For children to be abused, one needs to get access to these children. And I think South Africa has got beautiful pieces of legislation, but it doesn't help if the system is failing children. Because we need to understand that for children, it's very difficult for them to talk about their abuse. That's why we need to acknowledge that late disclosure doesn't mean that the crime didn't happen. There are factors. So the society needs to understand and not subject our children to secondary victimization, asking questions, why did the child take too long to talk about it? We have adults who still battle, even today, to talk about their abuse. People are talking about their abuse 30 years later. So people that are in position of power, your police officers, your prosecutors, social workers, they need to do what they are meant to do. And I think as a community, we need to actually fight to get services, because if we let things go unchallenged, it becomes a problem, because in cases, a lot of cases are thrown out of court with no reason. So if we have a community that is educated, they understand the rights, it is easier to take those that are trusted to uphold the rule of law to actually be held accountable for actually refusing to open cases, to charge people that are going to actually tamper with evidence collection, to actually move people who are not doing what they're supposed to do. Because as we are seated, our children are falling victims of different forms of abuse. The rate of child pornography is getting high because the social network is actually easily available to our children. So our children are becoming more and more vulnerable. But for us as a community, we need to stand firm and actually say that, and actually do hold those in power accountable, hold politicians accountable, because we are not going to be sitting here and entertain lip service. We need services. We need people to be accountable. We need our children to be protected as enshrined in the Constitution, and also child protection. And people, anyone, because the law is very clear. If you know of abuse and you fail to report, you're also guilty of a crime, and you should be prosecuted. We have mothers that are protecting their partners. We have communities that are keeping quiet. And communities need to know, if you know that a child has been abused and you're saying anything, you're also committing a crime. So those are the issues that the community needs to know, that you have a responsibility as an adult towards any child, not only your child. If you know a neighbor's child has been abused, you have a legal obligation to report.
Now, you have mentioned a very solid, integrated approach. This year's event comes at a time particularly when the nation witnesses some of the most horrific acts of violence against women and children. Now, as you know, the Social Development Department says 1 in 5 children in South Africa are subjected to some sort of sexual or emotional or physical abuse, as we've mentioned in our introduction, before they turn 18. You've mentioned the integrated approach. This year's theme is Let Us All Protect Children to Move South Africa Forward. What does that focus on?
Actually focuses on each and every individual. As I've mentioned, that everybody's got a legal obligation. And people feel that, it is not their responsibility, that you can just shy away. If you see your neighbor's child not going to school, that is a violation of their right to education, and that needs to be reported as well. If you know a child has been abused, everybody needs to come on board. And I think I've spoken about services. We need police officers that are going to be trained in collecting our evidence and the chain of evidence to be followed, so that, because we understand that DNA plays a major role, and we have an issue. Last week we were talking about the shortage of evidence collection kits. DNA plays a major role in cases of child murders and rape. And without DNA, it becomes a problem. So we need those. We need resources. We need training. We need our staff to be sensitized, because we know a lot of parents have actually gone to police officers to open cases that have been turned away. So we also need them to be sensitized to issues of violence. We need politicians, as much as they want the approach, money should be put into civil society organizations that are actually offering these services, because, professionals need to be paid. So there's a number of factors that need to be addressed in moving forward, and also and educators as well, because we know that a number of educators, sometimes they don't know how to deal with issues of child abuse and secondary victimization happen in schools. And we're talking about the South African Council of Educators, which need to actually take teachers to task and actually deregister them in terms of, so that they are not allowed to work with children anymore. And we also have the child protection register, that we need to properly screen people that are going to be working with our children, because whoever that is working with children, they need to be properly vetted, because they move around. They move from private sector to the government if they're not properly screened. They move, they become soccer coaches, they become, and I think also people that are actually defeating the end of interfering with the investigation, they also need to be brought to the book. We cannot sit back, listen, and we cannot sit back and just watch when children, we encourage our children to talk about their abuse, but what happens when they've spoken about their abuse? Do we believe them as parents? Do we actually interfere with the investigation? What is the society saying? Because there's a lot of victim blaming, there's a lot of shame, there's a lot of stigma attached to it, and we are, if we are going to say children talk about your abuse, not enough. We need to support our children.
Thank you very much.
Take them for therapy.
We're running out of time, but thank you very much. That was the Operation Director of the organization Women and Men Against Child Abuse, Vincentia. Thank you so much for joining us. Please do stay with us. We now take a break.